Hey man,
What it is, bro? What it is?
it's your living. How you doing?
Shoot, man. I've just been running errands, teaching stuff. Just got to the crib. Haven't fed my kids dinner yet.
Well, we'll keep this a little shorter so you can get dinner going. I'm in the
Yes.
same boat. I'm about to make some dinner right after this.
Yeah,
I
maybe I'll
was,
go outside. Maybe I'll go outside for a little bit.
yeah, it's a
Upcoming
little
hip
bit of an
hop.
overcast here. So what's up to upcoming hip hop?
We got some healthy snacks.
Oh man, fresh. Is that fresh peppers out
Some
there?
sweet peps. That's right.
Oh
That's right.
man,
Got the little get the little cameo. Just smell badass. Oh yeah, she's a bruiser.
all right, man. Well, hey, I just want to thank you for checking in with us here. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about your music and your last project being Deep Dark Hope, and really all the work that you've done with Big Cats over the years, and kind of what their influence on you has been. I know you've been in the music scene for a very long time here, but what's it been like working with Big Cats and everything that you've been able to accomplish with them?
Man, I love big cats, bro. That's one of my good friends. Yeah, I guess where to start. I don't know if you want a long answer or a short answer, but Big Cats he's a brilliant mad scientist. He's really good with the technology and the music, and just a fun guy to hang around with. But I'd been working with a band, Crunchy Kids, Eric Mason, key songwriter in that collective. And when Eric Mason started a project of his own, Big Cats and I were in that group. I was doing vocals, and Big Cats was producing. And I'd known Spencer for a long time, so I was like, we should start making some music together. And we just started experimenting um, from that setting, and just from rehearsals and stuff, and just be like, yo, let me see that beat, and then check this out. And we threw together that yeah, I can't remember what happened. It was an Ice House gig that they gave us a date, and they're like, well, can Crunchy Kids play this? And like somebody was unavailable, so we weren't available. And like, well, can Eric Mason's band play it? And somebody was unavailable. And me and Spencer were like, we just should make up an act for this date. And so he and I collaborated, and we just made an album pretty much to release on that date. It's cool. We just, I was in the middle of becoming what's it called? A certified yoga teacher at the time. So I was like immersed in like a bunch of different lifestyle practices, and I was just really inspired to make some music that was revolving around that, just kind of like the ideas of selflessness, and kind of just the opposite shit that you hear in rap music. I feel like rap is very
Right.
egocentric and very person centered, and I was just trying to get a little bit more. I don't know, just kind of just share my own personal endeavors through the idea of a more selfless being, you know?
Sure, and that kind of wavers into what I was going to talk about next with you, which is kind of the entertainment side of music at times versus I know you have a pretty heavy background in teaching and in the education field. And how have you been able to kind of blend that, and how does that connect with especially something like hip hop, which has been over the years something that's been used to teach and educate a lot of people as well?
Man, yeah, I was making music. I started making music when I was in college, and when I was in college, I was, undergrad. I was planning on just being like a world traveling writer. I was already freestyle rapping, drunk at parties, and smoking, driving around with my friends, and freestyling and shit. So like, I always saw myself as a rapper, but I was more like I always kind of had an idea of like, just I didn't want to just be like swag. Didn't want to just be like, oh, my dog is just digging holes in my garden. I'll bust your little head, dog. She's such a little, man. Love this dog. Anyways, let me shout out my one of my 5 gardens. This baby is large. My whole backyard. We're cooking, or we're growing lots of food this year. But
That's awesome.
yeah. So teaching, as far as teaching goes, you know, writing was always my thing, and then writing turned into us getting my master's in teaching around the same time Crunchy Kids was going on. I'd lived in Ecuador studying different languages and cultures, and so I was, I never considered myself like a rapper. I never really wanted to be a rapper. I like music, and I like words, and I like, the development of a person. But as far as that goes, I was never, my goal was never to be a famous rapper. I mean, maybe when I was like 16 or whatever. But so I was doing a lot of social work and education type work and traveling and just trying to learn and stuff. And then when I was in the middle of getting my master's degree, I had 2 kids in diapers, and I was working full time in a social work position. And then my homie Eric Mason, my dog is just wilding out. My homie Eric Mason was invited. He was playing with Big Cats and Toki Wright, and they were opening for Atmosphere, and I got to ride along, like, just support, just fun support. And hold on, I gotta handle.
Yeah.
You got it, Autumn? She's like, I got it. I'm like, I gotta hook this dog up. So I was in a unique setting of just hanging out with like Slug and Ant for several nights, and backstage, and just like looking at, like, this is kind of like one of my dreams or my goals, but I'm stressing about trying to get one of my academic papers turned in, and I was just really disenchanted at the time. Can you guys please hook her up, because I can't pay attention and talk with this dog wilding out. I might have to just handle this real quick.
It's all good. Yeah, it's the dad life.
Yeah, I gotta handle this. This
Sure.
dog. Sit. Okay. Interesting.
All right. No worries. That's what it is. It's that quarantine life. You gotta make
do multiple things. This dog just wants to run around too.
So yeah, I mean, and you talked a little bit about this as well. I mean, even bringing up your garden, and we'll kind of set up for what we're going to talk about next. Which was, we dove into the teaching a little bit, and then getting into like holistic health and wellness and what you do with yoga. But not only that, it comes from a place of, a lot of things start with what we eat, and turning that into how we feel. It's something that I've been doing a lot of lately, and feeling much better now that my diet is shifted towards a more organic, a more raw diet as well. So what have you seen in terms of that growth, and where do you see yourself pushing forward with all of the other aspects of your life?
Man, absolutely, bro. I feel like we're at a real unveiling, or like we're at a time when the veil is being lifted to health crises, and like we got a pandemic going on, which is obviously really bad, but prior to that we were already in a health crisis. We've already been in a health crisis stemming from food, man. It's like I could go on forever about how food is the worst thing for Americans. I'm part of a collective called Plantarian Planet, and I'm not like at all a strict vegan, but I'm a very conscious eater. You know, I like to source my food from, I'm very plant-based. I eat mostly plants. And I'm very conscious of where it comes from and stuff. But Plantarian Planet, it was started by a husband and wife friend of mine. The husband is a practicing hospital physician, Jim, and his wife, Eileen, both started this group. Eileen is a very knowledgeable, caterer, chef, makes oil-free, plant-based foods and everything. So we were throwing these events where I would lead meditations. It would be catered all up. It was like donation based, and then there'd be a lecture and a Q&A from this practicing hospital physician. And he always spoke about, the sad diet. The standard American diet is the sad diet, as he calls it, because it's, a bunch of hollow carbs, a bunch of processed, flours and sugars, and then like meat and cheese, and there's just the basis of it is what makes people sick. And we eat this, and we don't know any better. I wasn't educated in food. I came up from a fairly like conscious household, but still they didn't know shit about food, or like what we're supposed to be eating, or like what makes for a good, healthy person. So just re-educating people that our standard way of knowing, our standard way of eating, our standard lack of knowledge about food is the cause, like straight from the doctor's mouth. 95% of the stuff that he treats every day in the hospital stems from people's food and lifestyle, so heart disease, diabetes, cholesterol, high blood pressure, all types of different, common. And like with the COVID thing too, it's like these are the same things that are killing people. You get COVID and you have any of these pre-existing conditions, your likelihood of dying is way up, because conditions already existed and we're already killing people at insane numbers already. So like obviously this health crisis exasperates that, or kind of throws gas on the fire, but it doesn't address the underlying issue. So that's why we're seeing such inequity, both between, both racial disparities, economic disparities. It all stems from food,
Yeah, and I definitely see it. I mean, and it's only real recently that I've started kind of changing up my diet with things. In the last, so about 3 weeks ago, I cut pretty much all sugary snacks out. I haven't had anything in quite some time. And that alone, I can tell just the benefits of like less inflammation, that less like just kind of daily pain that I was dealing with. But then I've also started, once a day, I have just a smoothie that's all fruits and vegetables, with flaxseed in it, just to kind of give me some a little bit more filling.
Totally, yeah.
So it's definitely, I've seen the benefits, not just with the like little bit of weight loss that I've seen, but just in the overall energy and feeling that I get with that. So definitely something that I was really excited to talk to you about, because you're talking about growing plants, and I came from a family where we grew up on a farm. We had 3 massive gardens out there with everything you could imagine, and then we had cattle out there so we weren't vegetarian by any means, but we ate all local beef that we grew ourselves. We had chickens for eggs. Those small things, I think definitely play a big impact in how you feel, not just physically, but then you get into the mental side of it and what your mental health can be when you're eating better and feeling better. So,
dude, absolutely, man. Where the food comes from is everything to do with how it feels, man. Jeez, this dog is just terrorizing my youngest daughter. Just hook her back up. You can't let go of her. If you let go of her, I know, this little dog. Chill. Sit, Roxy. Good. Jeez.
How old is she now?
This dog is 3 months old. She's aggressive. But we're training her. We just got to be consistent about putting her on a leash when she starts nipping, and she just got So normally we just run her around the block like several times to burn off the
Right.
energy, but she just got spayed, so she's got stitches and is not supposed to
Oh,
be running. So she's
yeah.
she's just in a very very
Yeah,
wound
wound
up
up.
state. So yeah, about food and where it's sourced from, man. Like man, I don't even like. There's so much to talk about. I think about food so often. I was just watching a Vice documentary about bananas and like monoculture, like monocrops and stuff like that. I think about this stuff all the time, and it's all related. You know, climate change has to do with the way that we farm and create food more than anything. It's not just that we're burning fossil fuels. That's like a smaller part of it. You know, like people are
Right.
surprised to know that like less money from lobbyists, there's less money going to the government from like big oil and big pharma than there is from like big food like Coca-Cola
Yeah.
and General Mills and these things that just because they get tons of money to subsidize these cash crops, and these cash crops are nutrient depleted, but they're cheap as shit, and then they use them for different things. But there's parts of the government that are hired to create ads for Little Caesars to sell more cheese and shit. It's like
Right.
if you draw the curtain back and see how fucked up it all is, Coca-Cola is one of the biggest donors to the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society, even though they're some of the biggest contributing factors to the formation of those problems. And part of that, the reason why that doesn't change is because they've co-opted these things that are supposed to be regulating and checking them, and they fund them. So they're like, you don't want to, post this study about us, else we're going to cut your funding. So there's like really a lot of insidious shit going on as far as monoculture, monocrop. But back to like the global scale and impact of it is the soil. Like soil health is the lungs of the planet. So the way that we're farming, if you fly over the US, man, you just see farms. They're growing corn and soybean and wheat, a few cash crops. And the way that it's farmed, it's just doused in chemicals. These chemicals completely create desert. They create more and more desert. They kill more and more soil. And the actual soil health, the life and the ecosystem of the soil is where that carbon is supposed to be sequestered. It's supposed to be drawn into that. So this whole thing is like, not only are we burning these fossil fuels, but we're depleting on a insane scale the lungs of the planet, like the soil of the planet that's supposed to be, healing.
Have you ever heard of like biochar and the benefits from like so this is something that I did in college in my freshman year actually, and it came from a class called Tupac: A Thug's Life. So it was just this hip hop class, and I really knew almost nothing about hip hop when I started taking this class. But the guy was super multifaceted. He like interviewed Tupac's mom after he passed, and then he also had this really big environmental side to him. And so we started a group out of there called Terra Preta Enterprises, which I think now is like really taken off. But when I was in it, we were just in the starting phases of this. But it was all about Terra Preta was like it was something that they did down in the Amazon where the soils weren't very good, and they would slow burn wood in the absence of oxygen and get this charcoal. And then they would add it to the soils, and it would improve the soil like 700%. Well, I was at school up in Upper Michigan, and the soil up there is basically sand. So it was one of the first like carbon negative products to be able to be used. And so they started doing that. Like they've done it in the Amazon for thousands of years. And then we just started hearing about it up here. And I haven't heard much from them since then, but it's always been something that like is super interesting to me, because I think about the difference between like how we farmed growing up, was we took the manure from the cattle, you threw it in, you rototilled it in, you made your soil back to being healthy. But then you think about how big farms are doing it. And one of the big things I think about is like, they want to say it's the meat industry, but if you replaced the amount of crops that they would need to create processed vegan foods, it's going to do just as much damage to the environment. And that's what they don't think about. So it's more about locally small farms versus massive corporate farms, which is
Absolutely. I think it's easy for people to be like, save the earth, like, look at what cows are doing, like all the methane coming from the cows, and look at this and that, and going vegan is the eco-friendly way. That's not at all the truth. There's obviously benefits health-wise to cutting out a ton of meat and cheese and stuff, but cows don't produce that methane unless they're being fed shit they're not supposed to be eating in the first place. So these, CAFOs, they're called, the concentrated animal feeding operations. Most beef in the world right now is not coming from farms. It's coming from these factory lots where it's one of the most resource intensive practices on the globe, where they ship in all this soy and corn and they're feeding these cows stuff they're not supposed to be eating. So the cows are sick. Their burps and farts are creating greenhouse gases, and to drive all that stuff to them is bad. So like what you were talking about, you took the manure, you spread it around. So you're talking about an ecosystem. The farms, the farm animals are both like making the soil more rich by taking a dump on it, and like the putting like hoof prints in the ground is making more. So like, to zoom out, I was really inspired by this group called Kiss the Ground, and their whole theme is soil health and like thoughtful farming practices. And there's ways that are more than carbon negative. They can sequester carbon. They can farm carbon and pull carbon out of the air at such a drastic rate by using cows and chickens and just grazing, and basically simulating what the buffalo would have done on the wild plains of where like all these farms are now. There used to be just wild growing prairie grass with 14 inches or more of depth of living soil. Right now that stuff is so desertified that rainwater is washing all the chemicals they're spraying, just washing it into the water systems. It's eroding all the soil. There's like 10,000 square miles of desert per year being added to the face of the globe because of farming practices, which can be reversed just by thoughtfully going into it, taking animals out of these CAFOs and putting them in a healthy environment where they graze, where they roam free, and then they basically like cordon off and they do controlled grazing. So they put them in one spot, they graze there, they move them over, so there's no overgrazing, but their manure and their hoof prints are creating deeper and deeper, richer soil that are growing richer and richer in nutrients and sequestering incredible amounts of carbon, because the soil structure is supposed to, include mycelia and different, mushroom fungal things and mold things, and obviously worms, and a whole ecosystem of stuff is supposed to be living there. And that stuff is just getting scorched by, chem farming, big chem farming. So,
it's definitely, I mean, it's wild, the amount, like, I think about it, and it isn't easy. It's not an easy solution when you talk about having to have local farms and doing this, but I think it is all there, and growing up on a farm, I've seen it firsthand in the benefits you get. So what we're going to do now, we're going to switch it up a little bit, and we're just going to jump into the actual segment of this podcast, which is the quarantine questions. So the first question is, being in quarantine, you're kind of forced to be with yourself a little bit more. In your case, I mean, you're with your family a lot more, where you're not able to go out and do a lot of the other stuff. So you're just kind of, you tend to get a little bit more weird when you're kept inside for longer periods of time. So what's something that like you've caught yourself doing? For me, it's like I tend to like make weird faces when I'm like singing along to songs and stuff. And sometimes I'll just catch myself and be like, man, what am I doing right now? So what's something like that you caught yourself during this time?
That's a good question. I mean, I probably do a ton of weird shit that is unconscious to me, but I guess like on a similar note, I talk to the plants, like I garden. I usually am just like gardening in my underwear, and my kids think it's hilarious. Like I'm just like not. I have like a full like fenced in, like I got a privacy fence around the whole thing. So I'm
Yep.
usually just like kicking it in my underwear, like with my feet deep in the dirt, um, talking to plants or singing to plants. Sometimes having conversations on the phone. Yeah, just in my drawers, trying to get
Yep.
back to nature, dude. Sun on my skin, dirt on my feet.
Absolutely. So the second part of this, we talked a little bit about this, but diets are a big part of people's lives, and especially in the early months of the year, a lot more people are trying to eat healthier. They're doing their New Year's resolutions or trying to get their summer body in shape. So but quarantine's kind of thrown that out for a lot of people. So what's something during this time that either you've overeaten or that you just like can't get enough of?
Ooh, ooh, okay. Man, I love food. I've been drinking probably a lot more espresso than I normally do, but I would say cashew queso dip. We've been making like this queso dip, like the spicy nacho cheese, but it's not cheese. It's made out of cashews, and
Oh,
we eat it like crazy. Like we'll just eat it on some nachos, or like put it on like an omelet, or like over some broccoli. It's just basically like cheese sauce, but it's not cheese. And
yeah, I'm gonna
we
have to
have
get the
gone
recipe
through
for that
gone
because
through
I
pounds of cashew queso for sure.
yeah, man, I see, and that's the thing. Like, I've cut a lot of dairy out with I use coconut milk usually for most things, with like my smoothies and everything. But cheese is like the one thing that like I grew up in Wisconsin. I ate cheese my whole life, and I cannot find replacement cheeses that come close to like the real thing.
Replacement cheeses, I love it. Yeah, no, I agree, man. Those most of the store bought most of the store bought vegan cheeses are just they're even greasier and sit in my guts like worse than actual cheese. But there are a lot of good ones out there. They're just usually not in the store. You just got to make them from scratch. But
Sure.
I would give a shout out. Let me just tag Plantarian Planet. My homie Eileen is a cheese specialist. She makes these cultures. Super talented in making vegan cheese, and check her out.
Awesome.
But
Yeah.
she changed my whole opinion on how that works.
Yeah. So jumping into the next question here, the live music scene has kind of come to a complete halt recently, and we're not really sure when that's coming back. But it doesn't really stop artists and creatives from putting music out, from getting their music out to people, whether it's live shows on Instagram, whether it's all the stuff that they've done. So, what's something that you've seen, through this that either you've done or you've seen that you've thought like, man, that's a real creative way to get the message out there and to get your music out there?
I like what what Nerdy had organized, with just like the quarantine sessions. I know Smoking Joe from man, I'm forgetting Joe. Man, I'm gonna butcher his name too. But Smoking Joe did a cover series where he was just inviting people to like do covers of their favorite songs, and has like a Facebook Live group with like like 1 million views or something. Just having different people adding in their contributions, but overall, just technology being what it is has been pretty amazing in a time of quarantine. I'm like, at least we have all of these ways to connect. Even with like I'm teaching 12 or more public yoga classes a week, which technology is crazy. It's nuts. So I've seen a lot of like live concerts, and just a lot of interaction via video chats and Zoom, and live Insta feeds and Facebook and stuff like that.
Absolutely, and yeah, like you said, shout out to Nerdy and shout out to you. I've caught the chance yoga. That's one thing that I want to get a little bit more back into is doing yoga. I used to do it a little bit, especially having back problems my whole life. Like it's one of those things where, as I'm getting more energy, as I'm losing a little bit more weight, now I feel more comfortable being able to do a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely something that I want to check out.
Dude, come through, man. Every day at 5, I've been, I think 51 days I've went in a row going live at 5. I think I missed one day within that. But yeah, every day I'm going live. So some days are more, fitnessy and flowy, and some days are just super chill and more meditative. Some of it's just breath work. You never know what you're gonna get when you show up, but it's been a really good staple for me to just like be consistent and show up for myself, and it's been really rewarding as far as like being able to serve others, because people will always hit me up and say how much it does for them, or the various things that people have experienced by tuning in, connecting with different people, or just feeling good, or finding out they can get have psychedelic experiences by the way that they're breathing and stuff, like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think technology is wild that they can do that. It's been a learning curve too,
Oh yeah, and that's good, because you can have those type of the different classes where it's not, you don't have to be super advanced to tune in. And even when they are the advanced classes, I know, going to some more advanced classes, you can just do what you can do,
Right.
and it'll, you train yourself being better and better. So
yeah, so I feel like a good yoga teacher will remind people not to like traumatize themselves. Like, come and just do what you can. Like, you're not here to stunt for everybody else, or like, live
Right.
up. You're not here to live up to the image in your mind of your ego. You're here to like show up and feel what's there, and
Right.
that's
Absolutely. So, while music tends to be a really big creative outlet, whether it's people that listen to music to create, whether it's people that are creating the music itself. But a lot of people are finding during this time that they've got some hidden talents. For me, like I've been drawing a lot more throughout all of this. But have you found anything that it was like a hidden talent to you, or something that you had, or you'd been wanting to try, that you now had a little more time to try?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say what I've been really developing is developing my habits. So like I was reading a book by this life coach of the life coaches, he's all about habits. So I've been journaling a lot more. I've been really intentional about like when I wake up, like what are the first thoughts that I have, like on purpose, instead of just being like roll over and like get on my phone and start scrolling or whatever. Like I've really set an intention about what is it I'm grateful for, like what am I trying to achieve today, or like what am I who am I going to surprise today, like how can I serve others. And then I'm just really not every day is perfect, but like my goal is to have a habit, have an essential routine where I wake up, I clean out my mouth, I drink water, I journal, I read, I do all those things before I pick up my phone and start getting into the shit online that starts fucking with your energy.
Right.
So trying to like work out till exhaustion 5 times a week. Like there's just this book had me inspired to really practice the art of life. So when I do that, I can really see the difference. I can really see the benefits of focusing on my energy, my clarity, how I'm serving others, how I'm raising necessity, how, and that I feel like I have a lot of work to do, but I feel like I'm naturally good at it as well.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things, I when I actually started like losing a decent amount of weight, it wasn't until I got an app on my phone that was called MyNet Daily, and I just started counting calories.
Mm-hmm.
But not only was it the counting calories, it was, now I knew that if I'm going to eat something, I'm going to see it there in front of me. Like I'm going to see like, you ate this, like so like, even when I was making my meals, like if I'm going to have French fries, if I'm going to make these frozen French fries, like I'm going to realize that I can't just pour a bunch into a thing and make them. Like I have to be conscious of what I'm actually going to eat. And so that part of that journaling has definitely made me realize, like, yeah, maybe I don't want to buy that. When I go to the store and I'm like, yeah, maybe I don't really need to buy that because I can just spend that money on like the stuff that I'm actually going to eat and enjoy. So it's definitely been a big help to get those habits, and that's it's a stepping stone. You know, I'm in the same boat as you. Like I want to be bettering and bettering and bettering. But seeing this and how well that's worked out definitely gives me hope for the future too with it.
See, dude, you said the word that really stood out to me is just being conscious, man. Like, so for whether it's yoga or meditation or, journaling or being aware, is it all, what up, Tufa? Um, yeah, so it just comes down to being conscious because the way that our brain is networked, we have the default mode network, which is two parts of our brain that are simultaneously recalling the past and predicting the future based off the past. And that's more or less our autopilot. And by the time we're in our 30s, 95% of our day is spent within the default mode network. So 95% of our day is automatic. There's not a unique thought, there's not a unique feeling. It's just the same thing day after day. And the art of becoming conscious is simply noticing those things and then being like, whoa, I don't want to continue doing that, or like, whoa, I didn't realize I do or think or feel like that so frequently. So becoming aware of it is the first step to making a conscious decision. Do I want to keep doing this? And like I said, 95% of your day is the potential to bring consciousness to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all have so much work to do
Absolutely.
about being aware.
So the last question that I have for you is, as we start to reopen society, it's going to happen slowly. They've lifted the stay-at-home ban, but that only goes so far. As we slowly start to bring things back into our lives, what's one thing that you just like can't wait to get back to?
Fuck, live shows, man. I mean, and I know it's maybe distant, it's maybe far off, but I mean, just interacting with people. Like, I love just giving hugs and being surrounded in people and energy and stimulating conversations and just being on the scene and seeing people. Just that interaction, like, I live for that shit. I have for my entire life. Even if it is teaching yoga classes, like, I'm used to seeing dozens of people a day.
Right.
I'm used to feeling their energy. I'm used to exchanging energy and, sharing space. Like, I love doing that. So I drastically miss that. However far out that is, I'll probably start going to restaurants again. I really like food, but we've been cooking, like, our cooking and shopping and growing food and all that stuff has been pretty awesome as far as just like health and exploring different foods and making good dishes. Like, we're eating good here, but I miss restaurants. I miss interactions. I miss shows. It's about all I can really think. Like, but those are so essential and foundational in my life. Like, I teach yoga every day and I go to rap shows several times a week. So it's like,
Right.
let me bring me back to my normal life.
And it's, for me being, I'm for the most part, I like to be alone, but I also love the energy you get at the show, the entire atmosphere around you, and running into people that maybe you didn't know were going to be out at the show tonight, or like however that goes. And I tend to like come home and then decompress from it because I'm definitely more of a, like, I like to be at home. I like to be
Me
kind
too.
of by myself a lot too. So,
For sure.
so it is, I love it until it's the only thing I have.
Right.
And then I realize just how important that, like, being around people really was to me. So
This or
definitely
that.
shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I love being home. I love being by myself. I love all those things. But I also like the opposite. I think they're vital. They're a vital yin and yang in my balance.
So the last thing I wanted to do here too is just let you kind of talk to the fans, let them know what you have coming up, let them know what's going on in your world, anything that you want to talk about, any merch or anything else that you're promoting.
Yeah. Let me see. Well, I would always say just educate yourself on food and the importance of food, because there's really good ways to get a better routine and relationship with food, where you source it from, how it plays a role in your life. Food is medicine or it's poison, depending on which ones you pick. Um, as far as music, I got a lot in the bag. I don't have any timeline for releasing music. Um, I don't have any shows booked. I had a couple cancellations. Let's see. As far as merch goes, I would just say check out one of my yoga classes. I'm live at 5 every day. It's usually pretty mellow. Otherwise, I have a full schedule of daily classes that I'm teaching that are usually about an hour. They're usually on Zoom with several other people from all over the world. So check out some yoga stuff. I got a Patreon that is also yoga, breathwork, meditation related. Support people that are, out pushing their stuff. If you see somebody doing their thing, whether you got a bonus from your unemployment or a stimulus check or whatever, the money is energy. And even though we're far away from each other, it really makes people feel better when you go and buy one of their photos or their t-shirts or albums or whatever. So just like spread love, whether it's money or your attention. Call people that matter to you. Part of when I say I journal and like set goals to surprise people, every day, think of somebody you haven't talked to in a while, or maybe you have talked to in a while, but surprise them. Call them up with some appreciation. Tell them something, like why you miss them, or a funny memory, or fucking whatever. Like your energy is your most valuable currency, your attention, and your ability to surprise someone else is one of the greatest joys in life. So gifting others with your time or your energy or your attention or a compliment or a kind word, it goes a long way. And I've been noticing and reaping the benefits of that, not only like giving it out but receiving it back, and it's been a pretty amazing time to reflect and all that.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, I just wanted to say thanks again for checking in with us here. I'm glad to see, you're doing well over there. And, hopefully as this stuff kind of slows down here,
Is that
maybe
an
I'll.
inchworm? Look at how little this inchworm is. That's not even an inch. Hold on, I gotta see the right fingernail. It is so small you can't even see it climbing on her fingernail. There it is. Look at that tiny little
Yeah.
inchworm. Biodiversity. That's the name
Coming
of the game. That's crazy, she says. So yeah, we're planting hella pollinator friendly plants. We're growing all types of wild foods. We are installing a sub pod, which is a subterranean composter worm farm to compost up to 8 gallons of food trash a week, and supercharge the lawn and supercharge the soil. Just get interested. The world needs people that just pay attention, people that are conscious of their autopilot, and how simply inserting new routines, new habits has boundless outcomes in this world that we live in.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, I mean, when everything opens up, I've always loved farming and stuff. So I'll come check out the little gardens. We're looking at possibly putting up some planters here at my apartment so that we can get just some small stuff going.
Herbs,
It's always right
start with the herbs.
Exactly. We got my mom actually, she still works out at a greenhouse back in Green Bay, and then they still have the farm and everything as well. So she's got some plants and planters all ready for me. So my birthday coming up here, I'm gonna run home, get all my food, and start growing.
Yes, sir. That's key. That's the key right there, dude. Also, I should shout out Earth Dance Farms. If you live in a community and you have the financial resources, sponsor a CSA. Pay a farm to deliver your food to you every week. You don't know what you're gonna get, but like we pay ahead of time, but it boils down to like $35 a week. We get fresh, locally grown, chemical-free, organic vegetables of all kinds. You never know what you're gonna get, so trying new vegetables and figuring out how to cook different shit and put stuff in salads and whatnot. So we get a bushel box or a 3/4 bushel box every week, and it's like $30 a week or something. So you split that with a neighbor. It's a shitload of food. It's locally grown. It divests from this broken ass food system that we're used to and starts putting money and energy into solutions, and love into the community.
Yeah, what was that again? It's Earth Farms?
Earth Dance Farms, .com.
Okay.
Or dot something. Earth Dance Farms. Just look them up. They're in southern Minnesota. There's a bunch of different ones. That's just the one we go through. Just type in CSA in your community, like community source agriculture. They're all over the place. Just sponsor a farm and they feed you.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, have a good night. Get some food in the grills. I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to eat my dinner now.
Yes, sir.
Good catching up with you, man.
Yeah, you too, fam.